Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay, let's do it.
And here we are. I love that.
Okay, great. Welcome, YouTube. And I'm gonna get dude, my setup on this side to do these things is I've got Zoom going live, streaming to YouTube, and I'm gonna put an extra phone on Instagram and live stream there.
So you're technically available on all social platforms,
Not almost all, but yeah,
almost all. Well, the
yeah.
most mainstream ones.
Got this little gimbal thing I gotta get set up so that my phone looks at me. Hey, there we go.
There we go.
And we're going live on Instagram as well. Oh, Instagram, you can see my trash can. There I am. Instagram, welcome. We are getting set up to go.
When you first brought that thing out, I thought it was like an actual microphone at first because I just saw it out of the corner of my eye and I had to do a double take.
The
That
gimbal?
stand.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well,
I was
now
like, oh,
Instagram's live. Instagram, we're live on creativetc.io/event. And you can ask any question you want. We're doing free consults, free contract write-ups, underwriting, whatever. 2 hours for the next 2 hours from 12 to 2 p.m. Join me. Okay. I better move my windows around so I don't share somebody's sensitive information when I go to screen share. Zoop. That would be embarrassing. The disciplines required to stream, live stream and share your screens live with sensitive information, doing the stuff you're doing. It takes a little bit of thought. I've got 4 monitors and I have one monitor, just so you guys who've ever never done this before, I've got 4 monitors. One of them is dedicated as a screen share. And when I go live on something, I remove everything from that screen and only put something up there when I intend to share something. So it's a lot of fun. I'm posting in a couple of Facebook groups to let people know we're going live. I see a couple of names. Patrick, welcome. Nice to see you. If you've got any questions, you can be first in line. Have we met before?
No, we haven't.
Fantastic. Well, it is good to see you.
Thank you.
Where do you come from?
The Woodlands, Texas, north of Houston.
All right. I like it. I got to make my team some co-hosts here. The mechanics of Zoom. Make co-host. Bing, bing, bing. Oh, I didn't open breakout rooms. I got to
What
open
do we
breakout
have for
rooms.
breakout rooms today?
Well, listen, if I got to create them, I got to type all the names individually. So yesterday we did breakout rooms of fast food restaurants. We had 15 different, uh, recreate. Darn. Okay. All right. I got 15 breakout rooms open. So if we need private meetings, we can do that. Yesterday we had McDonald's, Pizza Hut, and all the other fast food restaurants for private breakout rooms. So that was fun. Ezra, son, will you get my coffee out of the microwave and bring it to me? Thanks. 4 kids. You got a bunch of table servants. Alan, good to see you again. Does anybody have questions? Anything at all? I mean, I can tell stories and we're going to get more people in here, but I just get invited to speak in California in June. Hello, son.
Can I ask you a question from yesterday?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, you were talking about VA loan and to take it you know contract for deed. Oh, I can't hear you.
No, you're good. I was telling Instagram to hit me on this
Uh,
link.
Something I just found out like 5 minutes ago that I didn't even know that people should check with VA loan. If the veteran is disabled, they're exempt from real estate taxes. So
Oh, in
check.
Texas in particular?
No, in most states.
Okay.
I think it's just like policy. Like if you're totally disabled, you're not paying real estate taxes. So count your numbers correctly and find out if they're paying taxes. So
Yeah,
that's
so Yeah, so that's a good point. So when it comes to underwriting, understand the tax status of your person, because if you're doing a sub 2 deal and you're like, oh, thanks, I've got a copy of the mortgage statement, I'm ready, I'm going to underwrite based on this, you had better take into consideration what are they actually paying for taxes? People almost always have the homestead exemption, which may go away. In certain states, there's a homestead exemption which lowers your tax rate as opposed to a non-owner occupied property. So you have to factor those things into your underwriting so that you can understand if it's actually a deal. And a lot of people don't consider taxes and insurance increases when they're putting together that underwriting. So that's critical, and that's a really good point. So especially veterans, like any veteran in Texas pays zero property tax, and you're going to get hit with a bill that goes from 0 to 4, 6, 7 grand per year in Texas. If you got if you get a VA loan, you already know that stuff.
Okay.
You're
My
crazy.
real question was, as far as yesterday question is basically, when you do get sub 2 and you do contract for deed and the policy stays in the seller's name, insurance policy, like you discussed, stays in the seller's name, and you get basically like a renter's policy. What happens to the house when it burns down? Do you have some kind of assignment of benefits to you, or how do you protect yourself?
Yeah. So normally when we do one of these, we're working with the buyer. So for those on Instagram, what's up, Mike? The question is, when you buy on a contract for deed and you get the renter's policy and the seller's policy is actually a landlord policy. Again, I'm not saying that's the gospel truth. I'm saying that's my research indicates that, and my insurance agent, people that I've talked to on dozens of deals, all want it done that way. I've had 2 exceptions, just to be clear. So when you have that set up, if the house burns down, what happens with the insurance proceed? Fantastic question. Normally, when we're working with a buyer for an investment purpose. And so the seller agrees to assign insurance proceeds to the buyer borrower. Even independently of that, though, if we were working for the seller and the seller is finding a regular person to sell their house to, they're not necessarily going to give an assignment of insurance proceeds, but guess what? The dwelling is covered and it needs to be repaired in accordance with the agreements. So if you have this contract for deed, the insurance proceeds need to be used to restore the house to its prior condition. Now, it is possible for someone to decide they want to walk away, but because of the obligation between the title holder, the seller on the contract for deed, and the equitable interest holder, the buyer on the contract for deed, because of their documented relationship, there is a mutual duty between the 2 parties. Number 1, to make payments. Number 2, to keep the property and to be able to deliver the property as specified. So if there's an insurance claim or some major problem that happens, the seller, I'm feeling, is compelled to to mutually decide if they're going to decide to just take the cash and walk away and split it however that needs to be split based on what's owed, then they need to make that decision mutually. Otherwise, the property has to be repaired. Again, when we're working with buyers and investor buyers, we're getting an assignment of insurance proceeds from the seller to the buyer so that it's not even a discussion for the seller to potentially try to screw things up.
Okay, thank you.
And I've seen situations where the payout from an insurance claim was high enough that somebody's like, I'd rather take the cash so that they can just, yeah, that's going to pay off the loan and still put $25K cash in my pocket. Fine, I'll sell it. I'll sell the lot for $5K and walk away, and somebody can come bulldoze and rebuild. Hey, would you guys who are here do me a favor? If this is providing value or you think you know somebody who needs to be here, share the link. Like if you press Alt-I in Zoom, it actually allows you to copy the invite link, paste it somewhere, send somebody a message. Mike says, not to mention the loss of income due to property being unavailable. Yeah. So, your policy may or may not cover alternate living arrangements, etc. I have a renter right now who's on an insurance claim. Their house did burn down. And let this be a lesson to everybody. I asked him, I said, look, I work in real estate. What lessons learned do you have that I can pass to my community of people who come to my Zooms and things like that? He said, do a video walkthrough of your entire house once every 6 months and update your coverage. He lost his house now he was insured, but he lost his house during or right after, toward the end of the spike from post-COVID, when everybody got their little stimulus checks and started using it as down payment on FHA loans, and everybody could suddenly afford a house. So property values spiked, artificial or not, and his insurance coverage was still down here. So when it burned down, the replacement cost of his property went way up. And so he said, update your insurance coverage annually, just reevaluate it. Don't be underinsured, because we have to come out of pocket in order to get this next house, to get our house rebuilt. Like major have to come out of pocket, and do a video walkthrough, open your drawers and show everything in every drawer once every 6 months. So that was a pretty good lesson learned that I'm happy to share. Instagram, you guys can join me, creativetc.io/event, and you can be on the live Zoom. That was a good question, though. All right, I've posted in a couple of Facebook groups. You guys, we got free contract write-ups. If you've got a deal or even close to a deal, let's sling one. I got contract specialists on standby who are ready to rock and roll, take a private room and fire off those contracts. I see in the chat.
Hey, Caleb, question for you. I know I've seen a few of your videos before, but you guys, can you kind of explain a little bit more about your total service that you guys provide? So I find the deal, come to you guys to help transactional coordinate that opportunity. Do you help also with the underwriting to make sure this opportunity might be the right fit according to some of my buy box conditions?
Yeah, and just for the sake of the audience, I've got Instagram. I've got a question that you guys can't hear. Are you a plant? Did we plant you to ask that question?
Me? No.
He's asking a good question that I would, if I planted somebody, I'd have somebody ask that question. Like, oh, just tell me the value you provide. So literally at Creative TC, yes, we want to gut check your stuff. I'm structured so that I still have skin in the game. My business structure is I don't get paid in full up front. We take a deposit, a non-refundable deposit, because we're going to put in the time and the hours. But we only get paid in full the remaining amount at close of escrow. So I only want to take on deals that I think are going to get to the finish line. So I have that motivation, which means I need to do a good job checking the deals and onboarding them up front so that we're not taking on crap deals, because they last way too long. They get stuck in escrow. They cancel. It's just, it can turn into a super nightmare. And so whatever I can do, number one, as a business owner, to protect my company from stuff like that, but also I care about people and I want you to understand, do you have a good deal or not? And so, yeah, we do. Mike on Instagram, you can hit the Zoom at creativetc.io/event, and there's a button, just join now. And that'll take you to the live Zoom. So we gut check your deal. And part of that is you got a free 15-minute chat with my guy, Marcelo, which he should be showing up to this Zoom at some point, but a free 15-minute chat, and he's going to gut check your deal and make sure it's actually a deal. Like, do you really have buy-in from the seller? Do they understand the transaction? And so whether or not you've already got a contract, we can have that conversation with you at no cost. And our suite of services, so to speak, is free consults, that upfront 15-minute. We've got paid consults if you've got an advanced issue, 30 minutes to an hour each. And then contract write-ups, which we're doing for free right now. So if you have a deal where you've got the verbal agreement between you and your seller, great, let's put it on paper. We got good paperwork. We've got people to support and run Q&As and give you the support you need to get that deal to where it's signed, to get it closed on paper, so that you can then open escrow. Like, the life cycle of a deal is pre-contract, escrow period, and then you close. So it's like, really, it's two phases as far as we're concerned. There's pre-contract, where you don't have a contract yet. It's all negotiations. And then there's the contract period. Once you get signatures, now you can open escrow and go do the deal. So we offer on both sides of that. We offer the pre-contract. We'll help you consult, underwrite, et cetera, and get the write-up written. And as soon as you get signatures, now we can move to the contract period, which is where we provide transaction management. And ideally, we've already gut checked the deal. So it's not like we're taking on transaction management of a deal that's not really very solid. And I'll challenge you. I would rather you have a good deal than not. So I'll challenge you and say, what exit strategies do you have in place for this? Have you got one that you're thinking of? Do you have any specific questions? We don't have to put people's names and addresses out there, but.
Yeah, we had a multi-family opportunity that I was looking at.
Okay.
The issue that I was having with that is just it does cash flow, but also confirming a few different details about the underwriting and just analyzing it to make sure it's the right fit. Do want to look at a few single family homes opportunities as well, but the main understanding is trying to align it to what might be the best financial consideration. What is the walk away considerations, kind of those red flags. So overanalyze them. It seems like it could be more of the task that I'm performing on some of these than others.
Okay. Quick note on guys on Instagram, we've got Mike_Powell13 is looking to become a private money partner on deals. So hit him up on Instagram if you need to a private money partner. He's looking for those deals. So maybe that's a deal. If Patrick, if you got one that's well underwritten, connect with him. Thank you. Lisa, have we spoken? Lisa McKinney. I interact on Facebook with you on some regular basis, but did we speak already on other stuff? You're muted. Or maybe she's talking to somebody else. Sorry, I thought she was
Unmute.
talking
No,
to me.
I'm talking to you.
Oh. So
I
how's
looked
life,
like I
Lisa?
was talking to somebody else. We were in a lot of the Zooms to begin with, but then as we started taking off, then we had less time to be sitting and watching because we were out doing.
That's great.
So yeah.
I love it. What kind of deals are you doing?
We done I had a wholesale land in my lap before I even knew what a wholesale was. I'm a realtor broker where we are, and so we started to do fix and flips, and some we hold. And today specifically, I signed up for Caleb to help me with a buyer. I think that's just trying to gaslight us. It's become very strange.
Yes.
I think he thinks he wants to be creative, but he doesn't know how to be creative. And so, you know, when
a buyer?
but the buyer for our house that we
Mhm.
had sitting, we hired a contractor who wouldn't sign the contract, and our 3-month flip took 2 years, and interest rates went from 3% to 7%.
Yeah.
So now this guy is going to bring some money forward, and we're going to do a seller buyback, and he's just telling me that all this kind of stuff that just doesn't make any sense. And I'm going to ask Caleb to be my partner because he's never met my other partner.
Yeah.
He won't answer me. I will flat out ask, how would you word this? How do you want this? You know, and all he comes back with is, I'm not an attorney, because he doesn't know.
I mean, I say that a lot too, but you know, I'll still give an opinion.
Yes, he would give, and he gives nothing. You know, it's like, okay, you don't like it this way, so then I'm writing this per your addendum. And then he's saying, but that gives you a contract for sale gives you like it's not valid. And I
A
buy
contract
houses
for
on
sale being
contract
like, you mean like a contract for deed or the purchase contract itself?
Either a contract for deed or contract for sale, either one is enforceable. If I stop making payments on the property, then they can kick me out. So
yeah.
His addendum had said that he would own 70% with the amount he's putting down. We would own 30% because that's the seller buyback, and that we would both be on the deed. And so I found an attorney after many said, don't do that.
It sounds messy. It does sound messy.
Well,
I do not like shared ownership.
Well, I don't think I do either. However, I don't want to have any of his liens be on me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we split it that way, or if he foreclosed because he's using a investment lending company, then they can only foreclose on his portion of the house.
Is that so?
That's the way
okay,
my attorney has proposed it. Now, if you have a
Okay.
better idea, it's hard to find somebody creatively up here in the flyby state
So
or
the
the
question,
flyover.
let me reframe the question and make sure I understand. So if you're going to do a deal jointly with somebody else, you're looking for a way for you not to be held accountable for any debts that they incur in connection with the
Yeah.
property?
Yeah.
That is tough. Now, you could put a personal guarantee on their debt to somebody else, but guess what? You can't give a mortgage or a deed of trust to a lender without the permission of all of the property owners. So you would have to allow the property to be foreclosed for non-payment of the debt that only one person signed for. So you can still lose the asset for their non-performance on that debt. I mean, you're in it together. That's the partnership. Now, can they foreclose on somebody's interest? I feel like there's a yes somewhere. I don't know how to achieve that, but that's a lot more specific than an agreement that I would want to strike up. Like I don't like, and I've been dealing with this for the last several hours today. I don't like partnerships very much because it's so easy for them to get messy. And I told the people today, I said, if I had to do a deal with somebody, I would not want to have either one of us performing duties on the property. Rehab, like, great, you can do rehab. Cool. We're going to hire somebody else, or I'm not doing the deal with you. Why? I got a company that can do rehabs. Yeah, but I'm not going to partner because I'm good. I'm okay being friends and business associates with you, and I can't fire you if you do a bad job. I expect you to do a good job, but I also have high expectations. So if you do a bad job, I can't fire you, and that's going to ruin our relationship. And that's worth more to me than the dollar amount that we can make on this deal. So I'm only going to do this deal if you and I agree to hire a contractor to do the work. I don't care that you own a contracting company. So sorry that you're going to miss out on that revenue, et cetera. But that's not the relationship that I'm going to allow myself to get into because it can turn so south. The upside is pretty good. The downside is extremely bad. And that
Right.
offset is enough for me to say, no, I need to bring people in as contractors and employees and whatever that I can fire for doing a bad job. Because if I have a partner who does a bad job, crap, I'm stuck. You know what I mean?
And that's what my question to him was, how do you want to see this structured? Because here's what my attorney has proposed, and per your addendum, you said, you would own 70% because of this
Yeah.
amount, and we would own this percent at this amount for seller buyback, and both of us would be on the deed.
Yep. And so
But
anything
he's
that
not one of my-
happens with the property generally requires joint signatures. Now, depending upon how title is held, title and deed being two things, title is the legal concept. You hold title,
Yes.
you have a deed. Your interest, 70-30, you can sell your interest sometimes. Depends on how
Yeah.
title is held. You may or may not be able to sell your interest in the deed, either to the other person or to a stranger.
Well, we
But that's where
both
things
asked
can get
for-
real messy.
We both asked for first right
A
on
refusal on the other person's portion.
Yeah, if they
Yeah.
want to go, he's not going to be able to wholesale it. There's no money in it to wholesale it. He's going to have it as a rental, but
Let me throw a warning to people. So the comment was that you wanted first right of refusal, and I see this a lot where people want first right of refusal on one another's equity portions of a
Mhm.
LLC or a deal. Here's my concern: is a lot of people will say that and they put it in there, but they don't put rules to actually regulate it. They're like, I get first right of refusal. Okay, at what price? Like, is there a price matching rule? Is it for a time
Oh.
period? And people don't regulate that stuff, or they only regulate one or two things. And when I read it, I'm like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And it's
Okay.
like you set your intentions forth, but you did not regulate how it actually has to happen. So the other person only has to comply by the letter. And really, effectively, you don't actually have a right to purchase. They can sell to whoever they want as long as they give you the right to buy it first. They don't have to say yes to your option. A lot of those provisions are super poorly
Well-
written. So just warning to the public.
That was something he threw out at the end, and I went, and then I'd been on boards reading, and so I had mine say, and we'll take first right also, but we want ours to be with a licensed, experienced appraiser, knowledgeable in our
Yeah, see,
area.
like how do you value the other person's section is a whole nother piece of like, how do you determine how much to pay?
Right. Right.
And who has to pay
So-
for that? And if somebody like, so if I want to sell my interest and you have first right of refusal, great. Does that mean you have to pay for the appraisal? And what if you hire somebody that you know, right? Do I have the right to contest it at my own expense? Like people don't address all of those things. And it's like, and when you start bringing out those concerns about, well, what about this? What about that? Do I have the right to contest it and pay for my own appraisal out of my own pocket? Well, why would you want to do that? Because we need to regulate the relationship. And they're like, oh, this is too complicated. I don't want, okay, then you should not enter into that relationship because it does need to be regulated. And if you're too scared to address all the issues that really go into making a business decision safe for both parties and equitable, you should not be going into partnerships.
Oh, this is somebody I do not want to partner with. I mean,
No, I know.
This was just
Well,
a buyer that came along.
Listen,
and
70-30,
that was
your
what-
partner's on the deal, like it or not. 70-30, when you have the shared ownership of the asset, your partner's in one way or another. And Lisa, I'm not talking just to you. When I say all those warnings and stuff, I'm talking
Sure.
I'm using your experience
In
as
general.
a jumping off point to like, when I talk to people, this is it. So like, you shouldn't be in a partnership. I'm saying to people, not to you.
So then when you are able to get a sale done with seller buyback, how traditionally does that look?
I don't do seller buybacks. I just generally would not recommend it. I would structure it as debt, additional debt on the property, or a cross collateralized loan or something along those lines.
Right. So a contract for sale, just it'd be, we buy houses on contract for
Yeah.
sale and they are
Yeah.
enforceable.
That's what I would do.
And
So,
they
yeah,
are,
and
yeah.
for the sake of clarity for everyone, contract for sale, agreement for deed, bond for deed, contract for deed, land contract, it's all the same thing. What you and I are talking about, right, Lisa?
Yes. Well, I
Okay,
think
so-
so, but then.
Well,
yeah,
no, I'm just
I had given-
they're called different things in different states. So
Mhm.
like you
Yes,
have to
they
call
are.
them by the right name in the right states. So
Right.
yes, I would agree that a contract for deed or equivalent is the right way to structure many of these things rather than taking a shared ownership. Especially because in a lot of states, a contract for deed can be canceled and revoked for non-performance early enough in the contract. Now, if they're 15 years through a 30-year thing, you actually have to foreclose, right? You need to know your state-specific laws about the contract for deeds, provisions of right to cancel, et cetera. But yeah, that's a great way to structure it because I heck sure do not want shared ownership especially with a stranger, but generally even with
No.
partners.
So when I went in, he said this needs rewritten up. So I wrote it up according to his addendum, which says, first purchase agreement at 157.5, second for the remaining on seller buyback at this percentage, 5-year balloon, yada yada. And I sent them out, and I had checked the contract for deed, and I suppose that since his lender wants first position, he said
Yeah.
uncheck that box and pick the other option.
Yeah,
which
so his
was-
lender, that's the problem with contract for deed, though, is if you're the buyer on a contract for deed or land contract, et cetera, you don't have the right to place liens on the property. And so if the person has to be, hey, Instagram, we're live on Zoom, you can hit creativetc.io/event and join the live Zoom. With the contract for deed, though, nobody's going to lend on that because they don't get a lien position. Unless
Right.
you, the seller, are willing to give them a lien position on the house. But that's just a weird thing that nobody's going to agree to. So, I mean, you probably need some amount of cash. If your buyer doesn't have that amount of cash, that's not your buyer. If you're doing a contract for deed.
Well, he's bringing in 2/3, which is how we kind of came up with the 70/30.
With a lender or his cash?
Both. Yeah, I think
No,
he's
that's
got
what I'm
10
saying.
down.
I'm saying
And
ignore the
hard
lender.
money.
It's only his cash. Yeah, a hard money lender is not going to place a lien like that. Do you own it free and clear right now?
No, but once we sell it to him, we will.
If he has a lender that comes in and wipes out your first position debt, then yeah, that's a real messy situation. I do not expect a lender to come in and play that game, especially with a contract for deed. The seller buyback with a partial purchase That's real interesting. Basically, you're entering into a joint partnership or a joint venture of some sort with your buyer in that case. And I'm like, I would not touch that.
So just have it be just a straight out contract sale and have it be like a second mortgage?
Yeah, your existing debt probably has to stay in place. You take your cash down payment from that person, and he doesn't use a hard money lender because you become the lender. Like contract for
Oh.
deed becomes the wraparound financing for it.
So we have to refinance this house now for the third time.
I think you don't have your buyer. I think that's not your buyer.
You don't think so?
I don't think so because if it's me, I'm not going to go into this partnership with a buyer like that. I've seen way too many of those go south. People have high hopes and dreams, and if the only way their hope and dream can make sense is if you make a huge concession like that, no. So if he doesn't pay you, are you losing money? Are you waiting to win or waiting to not lose?
It's a 50-50. And at this point, we are so over this house.
Yes.
This gets us out of.
Why not take a cash offer then and just be done? I know it's going to lowball.
The thing about this is that the offer that he's made is decent, and if he pays us on that 5-year contract and then pays us the balloon.
That's the language that I don't like to hear. You sound like you're stretching to make a deal out of something that's already not.
Well, no, that was in the original offer, was that
I know, but the logic that I'm hearing from your head sounds to me like you're trying to make a deal out of something that already kind of isn't. Like the reality of the situation. And I don't know all the details, but based on conversations I've had with a lot of people, that's where I would guess you're at. It's kind of not a deal, but you're trying to make it a deal. But if you do it this way and it goes south, it's worse than if you just took a lowball cash offer and maybe broke even or lost a little bit of money right now. Especially if you're sick and tired of it, because it's the ones that you're sick and tired of that keep hanging on.
Well, and this one, with what he would be paying me down, it would be a break even. And if we got nothing else out of it, we're good.
Okay, that's a good position to be in, right?
So then if we do get payments from him, it's just bonus. Yes.
Okay, so you've recovered at that point, and now it's only potential. Yeah. You're waiting for upside, not waiting. That's why I said the question: are you waiting to win or waiting to not lose? Because waiting and depending upon somebody else to not lose is not the position I would want to see you in.
No.
I'm 100% okay with somebody saying, "I got my initial stuff back," and now it's like, if they perform great, I made money. If they don't, but I won't, it's not killing me.
I'm just trying to convince him that per his addendum, we need 2 transactions. And he's saying,
because the hard money lender is only going to loan to him if he buys the whole thing. And then he immediately plans to subsequently sell you 30% interest in the property.
Well, what he wrote is, if you sell me the house at 157.5, you can't come back and sell me the house again on a contract for deed at 67.5. At that point, the contract for deed is null and void as you are no longer the owner of the property.
Sure. What's the subsequent transaction then? The 2 transactions?
The 2 transactions were going to be the first purchase agreement for the 157.
Like a full purchase.
Right. That's what they that's what they actually put it on, was a regular purchase agreement.
Right. And in that case, the title would transfer and you would no longer be the owner.
So I was asking him, what is it that this is what you told me to do. Per the addendum, buyer to provide financing for 70%, 225 times 70 is 157.5. That will be first lien. Seller to finance the remaining 30% at 67,500 at 8% with 5-year balloon. This will be the carry back mortgage and second position.
Okay, just a heads up to everybody. Lenders don't like second position loans. So if you plan on putting a second position loan after closing and you fail to inform them, especially intentionally, you're withholding material information, which is fraudulent. So all these too creative ideas where people are like, oh, I'll just wait a week and put a second position lien on, or wait for a day after closing. You're committing loan fraud. Unless the lender knows about it and approves. All the didgeridoo stuff, I can't stand behind. It's
Well, the original one had the entire amount, and then it just said fee addendum. But if you put that on there, then the lender wants to see what's on that addendum.
exactly.
And
the lender needs to see the full purchase contract. So if you execute two separate agreements, the intention of which is to withhold information from one of the parties, you're intentionally withholding information. And if you withhold information that they would reasonably want to know, that meaning any reasonable person in that lender's shoes would say, yeah, I want to know about that so that I can make a good decision on whether this is the
Right.
loan I want to make. If you intentionally withhold that information, that's fraud. You
well,
just can't.
His lender has to know that he is doing a seller buyback, because he's only bringing X amount of his own cash and he's borrowing X amount of cash from them. And the purchase price is.
So get it in like get everything in writing in a single agreement. That's what I say there. I think, again, this is not your buyer. If you can't do the whole transaction in one go, then there's something.
He wants it in
wrong.
one go, and I was trying to keep it in. I can't. He's okay. So by marking the addendum, he says we can just do what we said we were going to do, which is what I thought is what he wanted, was to write the purchase agreement A, write the purchase agreement B. And now he's saying, I thought we'd talk this over and we were going to do it this way, but we never got into the contract part of details. And I thought that's what the contract sale part would be.
Based on what I know from your situation right now, I would say you need the initial purchase contract that sets forth the total purchase price. He's bringing in a hard money lender. And if you have to buy back some equity, which is weird, by the way, and I don't like getting too weird, and creative finance is already weird, then your purchase contract needs to indicate that you retain 30% ownership. That's what I mean by a single transaction. You don't do a transaction where he buys 100% and you buy back 30. You do a transaction where he buys 70%, but then you're both going to be obligated on that loan, the hard money loan. That's the only way to do it for me. Can you do something crazier and more creative? Yeah, but I think I'm an advocate for creative finance, but I think plenty of people do stuff that's a little too creative, and they get themselves into these weird positions where it's going to be damaging, or they don't realize they're doing something that may be illegal.
Well,
that's my concern for you. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's my concern for you. If you want to talk more about it, we can send somebody to a breakout room with you, and you guys can review the actual documents.
I set for a 12:30 with Caleb, so I'm sorry. I don't remember who it was now. He's in one of my folders up here.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. We have a question from Mr. Jason. Welcome, Jason.
Can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Background.
Hey, thank you. First of all, I appreciate you putting something like this on, and all the stuff that you put out on YouTube has been really helpful to kind of get an understanding. I am not new to real estate, but I am new to the creative side, and I've been watching a ton of Pace's videos and making a lot of outbound calls to on-market properties. I do have my first potential deal, just got off the phone with the agent, got the mortgage statement and everything. So I just had a few questions about a VA loan and the potential of that buyer utilizing their benefits in their new purchase in the future.
Yeah, so the VA benefits. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to question, are you buying it contract for deed or sub-2 or wrap or what?
Well, I wanted to also get your opinion on that. I live in Texas, but this property is in Louisiana.
Oh, yeah. Again, so for the audience who hasn't heard this before, I'm going to challenge you real hard on if you're doing let me rephrase that. I'm going to challenge you real hard. If you're doing a purchase of a VA loan property and you're not buying it on a contract for deed or land contract or agreement for sale or whatever, right? Same thing. If you're doing that and you're not then why? Why would you do that as a sub 2 or a wrap? Because when you look at the VA guidelines, and I can put them in the chat again, they don't consider a contract for deed to be a disposition, meaning it's an unrestricted transfer, meaning the lender can't call due on sale. The only state this doesn't work is Texas because they generally disallow executory contracts that last longer than 6 months. And I have to qualify that with, it's not illegal, it's just extremely regulated and it's not worth it. So people don't do contract for deed in Texas. So outside of Texas, why in the world, and there are valid reasons, but generally, why in the world would you ever do a VA loan sub 2 or wrap instead of as a contract for deed?
So that I'm fully open to doing that. I have no preference either way. And I've seen your previous videos of the guidelines and the breakdown, which is really helpful. So that part I need to do more research on just to understand the difference, but I'm fully okay with doing the contract for deed. But they are looking to, and they haven't raised any concerns. I'm just in my initial conversations with the agent who seems very open, and the seller sent over their mortgage statement instantly. So it seems like they're quite motivated.
Nice.
So it's just, I want to make sure I'm not putting them in a bad situation moving forward. So they, I guess my question is, what are the criteria around being able to utilize the VA benefits? Again, I've seen somebody mention that you can utilize it multiple times if you haven't used up all of your eligibility. So I just don't quite know that answer.
So the question for Instagram, and Instagram, you should be on my live Zoom instead. The question is, how do I use how does a seller reuse their entitlement for a VA loan? So it comes down to, they have a certain amount of entitlement. You have this much entitlement, right? When you buy your first house, you use this much entitlement, or maybe this much, who knows? But whatever's left is what you can use toward the purchase of another house. So unless that loan balance gets assumed by somebody else and forgiven, or restored back to their entitlement, if they use their full entitlement on first house, they have no more entitlement left. They can get a second house using their entitlement. If I could go back, well, I got rejected for military on medical grounds, but if I had the opportunity to go back and I would get accepted to the military, golly, how would I change things? I would buy $75,000 house, live in it for a year, buy another one with my VA loan, 0% down, get in there, maybe clean it up, fix it up a little bit, put renters in, get to the next one. And I'd have 5 or 10 of these things, all for 0 down up front, fix them up, get them rented, and move on. And every time I change service stations, guess what? I've got 3 or 4 houses behind me because I bought 3 or 4 in the last 4 years using my VA loan benefits. And my primary residence would come 5 to 10 years down the line when I start refinancing those and get those VA loans paid off. And now I'm going to buy my real primary residence, man. Golly. The opportunity people have, that veterans have, to just build wealth by just, you've got these benefits. Let me show you how to use them. So yes, they can get another loan with a VA loan, meaning 0 down, but sometimes they can't get enough, or they don't have enough entitlement left, which means they do have to bring some down payment to the deal. It's funny to me though, and veterans, I don't want to disrespect you, but it's funny to me how many people, how many veterans are like a total deal breaker if I have to bring a single dollar to closing. I'm like, nobody else in the world has that position. And like, it's a total, what are the actual other, like they just refuse to consider what the other monetary benefits are. You seriously can't afford to bring $12,000 to $25,000 to closing for you to buy a $600,000 house? That's out of the question for you? It seems a little over the top to me. When I talk, it's a lot of sellers I've talked to that are like that. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, that it is what it is. It's a mindset thing, I guess. But yeah, and they have to ask what their entitlement is based on what they've used so far.
And they would ask that to their future loan officer, or to the VA directly?
To the VA, where they actually get their benefits administrator, whatever equivalent name that is.
Okay. And they'll give them an amount, or they'll
say you can buy a house for up to this many dollars with 0 down payment. Above this price, you'd have to start coming out of pocket for the down payment. Okay. And there are calculators online. I don't have a favorite one to give you a link or anything, but you know.
Okay. And then can you, and if somebody else needs to jump in, I totally.
No, you're good. I got an hour and 15 minutes left. So
Awesome. Can you explain the contract for deed versus the subject to? And if you've done that
Yeah.
on another video, I'm happy to just go watch that if that's easier.
fresh content's always good. And I learn on a weekly and monthly basis. So there's little tweaks and things that come into play. Oh, I didn't put my hat on the right way. I've been playing it loose today. So with a contract for deed versus a sub 2, what I want you guys to know is that a contract for deed is a great way to buy a house. It's a great way to buy on. It's a seller, like, so seller finance is a category of transactions. Sub 2 is one of the subcategories. Contract for deed is a subcategory. Straight seller finance is like, there's individual ways that can be combined on how to purchase a house that's seller finance. Contract for deed is one of those ways. Contract for deed, land contract, agreement for sale, bond for deed. I just want to say all those because they all mean the same thing. Is where you don't get the deed until you finish your payment obligations. It's like lease to own with a car. You don't get the title to the car until you finish paying it off. So it's very similar to lease to own with a car, except with the contract for deed, I actually like it. It's a super doc in my opinion, because it serves several purposes. Number one, it sets forth the purchase price. Number two, it sets forth the amount of debt, right? So I'm going to buy it for $600,000. I'm going to give $50,000 up front, and the remaining $550,000 is financed at X% interest for the next 30 years. So it serves as a promissory note and a deed of trust or mortgage in one, and it serves effectively the same. It's not actually a deed, so I'm speaking in form. It acts as a deed. It's a public recordable instrument. So it's like combining 3 documents plus into, and it acts kind of like a memorandum because it gets recorded publicly. So all these aspects are combined into one document. I love it. I think it's a great way to do things. When should you not use a contract for deed? When you've got a contentious seller who is going to jack around or is not going to be available in the future. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. Because technically, if they hold title to the property legally still, they may or may not be able to go place additional liens on the property. Now, are they allowed to on paper? No. Can they actually accomplish it in real life? Yes. And that's where I'm like, if you have a seller that you don't trust, that makes foolish decisions, that's rash, that's on the verge of bankruptcy, that these, unstable person, don't get in bed with that person. In a contract for deed, you are stuck with somebody for a while. And so I would rather do a straight sub 2 where I have full control, I have the deed and things like that. But I think a lot of people are really stuck on this. If I don't have the deed, it's not a deal. There's a lot of good reasons to go with contract for deed, namely VA loans not being subject to due on sale. That's huge.
Okay. And then finally, to work, I'd love to work with you guys on the structure of this. How does that work? Do I just come to you and say, we've negotiated these rough terms and you help with the paperwork, or how does that process work?
Yeah. So we have free 15-minute consults. I'm actually going to put my website on screen so you guys can see what that looks like on how to work with us. Remove spotlight. Okay. So on the main website, literally, you can book a free chat anytime, 15 minutes. If you have this question, any other question, you're not sure what to do, book a free 15-minute chat. Absolutely. Fastest, easiest way to get a hold of us. Next, I want to touch on the write-ups. We are doing free contract write-ups during this session. So if you have something you want written up, Jason, if you've got it close enough where you're like, I've got 90% of the information I need, let's put the offer together so I can send it over as soon as I finish getting whatever information. Let's do it. I'll send you in a breakout room with one of my contract specialists and you get it written up. It'll be in DocuSign, ready to go.
Great.
So services, you got this write-up, but also I think what you guys need to know is read through this. Here's the 3-step process. You go negotiate the deal. That's on you. You consult with us. You get that meeting with us, and we get the contract out and you get it signed. Next, I think there's a lot of valuable information on this page, whether or not you use Creative TC. If you're doing a creative deal, period, you should know this stuff, a sub 2 deal. Before you get started, make sure you have these things. You need, obviously, the property address, understanding of your entry and exit strategy. There's a lot of newer people doing things where they get stuck on, so focused on getting into the deal that they don't know how they're going to get out. They don't have an exit strategy. And so that's dangerous too, because if you don't know your exit strategy, that does have a heavy influence on, well, how should you structure the entry? Because you have to structure it to allow for the exit that you intend, right? If you've negotiated with a seller and they're going to demand a balloon of you, that's okay in certain circumstances. but not if you intend to wrap to an owner occupant buyer. That's why I'm saying it's important to know your exit strategy as well, or the exit strategy of your intended buyer. If you're going to middleman this thing and assign it to somebody, who is your buyer and what is their exit strategy? It's so critical to know all that stuff, because you can't put a balloon on an owner occupant buyer. And so you have to factor that into your initial negotiations with the seller. So these are the things you need to know. Again, that's creativetc.io. Under services, we've got the write-up, and you can just read the page for value. Okay. How much of your question did I answer there, Jason? You asked about how do we get
A
connected and
majority
get
of it. So
started.
thank you. And I'll come refer back to this.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Great questions.
And I would love to go to a breakout room if you don't mind, and at least see if
Yeah.
I have enough info to get started. If not, I'll book a consultation later.
Yeah. Well, it's all complimentary right now. Let me look at the list of participants. I got a couple of team members on here. Let me pick one. I got Bongi. Bongi, pick
Happy,
a room
Caleb.
and let Mr. Jason know which room to pop into.
Jason, can I see you in 5?
In 5, let's see. How do I do that?
So there's breakout
just
rooms.
join.
If you're on the Zoom, you can click, there's a button for breakout rooms, either on mobile or desktop, and you scroll down, find room 5, and you guys hit join. Now, everybody else on the Zoom, that's a private call. That's for him and her. Stay out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, good deal. Fantastic. Is Marcelo in here? He had a client meeting. I want to know if he was back yet. No, doesn't look like it. That's all right. Welcome, everybody. On Instagram, we're at creativetc.io/event. You can join free live Zoom there. Well, next question. Anybody? Oh, I see some stuff in the chat. Is there something I need to address there? Isn't there a way to write off 75% of the DTI entitlement if you've rented the property out? Actually, that's a good question. So is there a way to write off debt to income ratio? I'm going to separate that question, debt to income ratio versus entitlement. VA entitlement is its own thing. And if the loan is open, the entitlement is consumed to that amount. Whatever amount's consumed, as long as that loan stays open, is consumed. So you don't get to write that down. Now, the debt to income question. If you're looking to buy another property, and your debt to income ratio comes into consideration for any loan officer. And so it is up to the loan officer to do that debt to income write-off. So if you're working with a seller who plans to buy another property, this is a question you should be asking. What are you doing? And when I buy this house from you sub 2, what's next for you? That's there's a whole story, and there are people involved, and there's a lot of moving variables, that interdependencies in these deals. So knowing what the seller intends to do is important for you on the front end, negotiating with that seller. If they intend to buy another property, the question comes into how soon? Do you already have a loan officer? Are you already pre-approved for it? And it can complicate. And there's a lot of wholesalers who don't want to have that conversation because it can destroy their deal. It can complicate things. But that's not the right way to handle it, you guys. From an ethical perspective, that's not the right way to handle it. You don't just leave stuff out and let it be bombs dropping on people later on in the deal. If you should be finding out what they intend to do, and if they intend to buy another property, we need to address the DTI issue now. If they don't intend to buy another property for 6 to 12 months, thumbs up, no problem. Just let them know, hey, when you apply for your next loan, I'm here for you. Let me know, and we'll make sure that we write you any letters that your loan officer needs to see to prove that you're not responsible for this debt anymore. I use that language, not responsible. Technically, they are accountable for it because it's on their credit. But through a purchase agreement, a promissory note, a wrap, whatever, they have assigned responsibility to somebody else, to the buyer. And that's an important concept, accountability versus responsibility. Accountability never changes on that loan, on that mortgage. The accountability goes to the borrower. The responsibility can be assigned to somebody else, though, through a sub 2 or a wrap purchase agreement. So the debt to income ratio, we need to address that early on. If they need to get another property right away, then you need to get them to get pre-approved and talking to their lender before you close on the property. Because you may start, by closing, you may start a timer in which they can't get their debt to income ratio adjusted for 60, 90, 120, maybe 180 days. It depends on their loan officer. Can that loan officer, number one, are they allowed to? Because different companies have different policies. And number two, are they willing to? Because some people want to play ball and some people are like, I'm not touching that. Not worth it to me. So you may have to find a different lender, or your seller may have to find a different person to be their lender. Maybe that means you call 5 or 10. They are out there. We've got several examples of people who do it. One of my lenders did it before I even knew it was a thing when I was refinancing my first house. So the debt to income ratio is a real issue that does need to be addressed early on. And the seller's lender, you can have that conversation with them. Hey, I'm taking responsibility for this loan. I'm going to be making the payments. What do you need to see to allow them to go get a new loan? Some lenders require a signed lease. So you can execute as a lease with an option to purchase, and the purchase price would be the remaining balance when you execute your option. Some people require you to just sign an affidavit or show some sort of promissory document that promises that you will make payments on behalf of. Others require either 6 months up front, 3 months up front, or a history of 3 to 6 months of payments. Like there's so many different ways. You got to play by their rules. That's the thing. When the lender's in charge, the lender's in charge, and you got to ask them. You don't walk into this saying, hey, here, I need you to write off 75%. Here's how you're going to do it. Here's a lease. That's not what, oh, I've got this serviced. You're not in charge of it. They're in charge. It's their rules. You have to play by their rules. So ask them, this is my situation. What do you need to see in order to discount the debt to income ratio so that John here can buy his next property? The lack of humility and the audacity that I've seen some people exhibit towards loan officers, as if the loan officer has a duty to write down the debt to income ratio. No, that loan officer is in charge of managing risk. Is Caleb a risky borrower? Well, if his debt to income ratio is crap, then yes, he is a risky borrower and I'm not going to loan to him. Who are you to tell me I have to loan to him? No way. Get out of here. And if you approach me with humility and say, it does look like Caleb is probably a bad risk. So what can we do to reduce that risk? Because guess what? I'm actually going to be making payments on his other mortgage. So can maybe you discount his debt to income ratio by that amount because I'm going to be paying it? Oh, well, let me look and see if we can de-risk Caleb Christopher as a borrower. Yeah, in fact, if I had this document from you and this document and you showed me proof of XYZ, I could write down the debt to income ratio and approve Caleb because he's less risky with these other safety factors in place. It's all about risk management. Is that a helpful perspective? Maybe some yeses in the chat would help me. Great. Thank you, Michael. Did Marcelo make it in yet? No, he's still on that other chat. All right. I've got a creative underwriting calculator, and some of those people may be joining any moment as well. So they may come in with underwriting questions, and I'll just throw my calculator on the screen if that's the case. How are we doing? Are there any other questions that I'm missing in the chat? Sarah, anybody on the team? Oh, there we go. Is it Myra?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Hey,
Welcome.
Caleb. I'm a gator, so not too familiar with the Sub2 and creative aspect of acquiring properties, but we're working in conjunction with a Sub2 member.
Yep.
And we're trying to acquire a property. So essentially there's 2 LLCs.
You're trying to partner on it?
We're trying to partner on it, correct.
So you're a gator. Are you wanting to be a private money partner? So you say you're a gator. Is that the role or capacity you're acting in, or did you just let me know which community
So
you're in?
So me and 6 other members are in an LLC, and we're going to bring the capital to try and fund this deal. And then the person who found the property, he's boots on the ground. He's a Sub2 member, and he is a general contractor. So essentially we're thinking this will be a fix and flip, and our initial desire was to hold the property. The issue we're running into is that the general contractors LLC, he is the one with the relationship to the hard money lender. So we were trying to go through this, like we would fund, look, myself and the capital partners would fund the purchase price and put in a little bit just to start the rehab, while the general contractor awaits for the hard money lender to release funds. just to get the project going. Now, I think what we're running into is that the general contractor who has the relationship with the hard money lender, I guess what we're seeing is that the loan would be made out to his LLC. And what I guess my question is, what are the best what are the best solutions for us as capital partners to have some stake in this and be able to be secured? I think the only thing we've come up with are like possibly like a quick claim deed, execution of power of attorney, and just have stuff on a written agreement, because our understanding right now is that because the general contractor's LLC has already been vetted by this hard money lender, he's submitted all his paperwork, he's the one that has the relationship. We're not really able to come in and put ourselves
And have real security in the agreement.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where
is the tough spot.
That's what we're trying to, and of course you want to trust everybody, but we talk about, we've seen scenarios where the person who's holding the title or whose name is on the property itself has like a horrible, crazy accident or whatever it may be. We're wondering how we ensure that we can have some control over this as well.
That is a tough spot. I would say you're not a Gator in this situation. You're a private money partner, but Gator, so like the Gator loan, just to be clear,
Yes.
the definition of a Gator loan or Gator partner is where it's an unsecured position where you're bringing cash on the front end to be earnest money for a nice fat return. You try to de-risk it by getting control of the situation. In this case, you're in the Gator program, and so you're learning other strategies as well, and you want to be a private money partner on this deal. I'm waiting for my screen share to pop up.
I dabble in a few different, like I've done
Exactly.
PMLs, but in other deals that I've done, the property is already under the control of somebody. We JV and they just write an agreement, but this one's a little bit different.
Yeah. So forgive my sign-in issue on this iPad because OneNote password got changed the other day, and I don't have time to type it in manually. It's like 40 characters. Okay, so this is you, the Gator lender capital partner, right? It's already complex because of the roles you see yourself in. I'm going to strike Gator. Okay, we're going to remove Gator because that's not the role you're in. You're a lender / capital partner. Is it one or the other? Is it both?
Capital partner.
Okay, great. I like simplicity, and when people see themselves as lenders and capital partners, I have a problem with that. I'm no joke. I'm billing $450 an hour to a group who has this joint venture LLC capital partner group where two people came in as lenders / LLC members making capital contributions, and they're treating it as both. And it's a really tough situation because they have not clearly defined loan versus capital contribution or preferred returns or any of this stuff. So you're either joining as a member of an LLC as a capital partner, or you're lending money, really. Now, the problem, if you're bringing cash, is that would be considered a second position loan, and the primary lender is going to say, heck no, tech no, you're not allowed to do that. Okay, so let's get everybody on the same page. HML for hard money lender. Okay, they want to be in first position, deed of trust or mortgage. I'm going to say that deed of trust is faster to write, so deed of trust, I mean both, whichever it is in that state. First position, deed of trust. They will not allow, no lender that I know of other than private money lenders will allow for this.
Yes. So that's what I've done previously, and that's what I'm familiar with.
Yes. And so
you can't.
If this lender does not allow for a second position loan, you can't come in and fund second position as a lender. So therefore you have to partner on the deal.
Yes.
Now, what you're facing, I've made this too close to the top. Hold on. Let me move everything down a little bit with the lasso tool. Yay. Okay. So your contractor / partner up here, they're the ones that have the relationship.
Yeah.
They're the ones that have the relationship and the approval
Mm-hmm.
with the hard money lender, not you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like you're going to put yourself, you're not going to get like inside of their contractor company.
We tried.
Right.
That was, yeah,
Right.
that was a no.
So you're a little late to the game is the thing. Ideally, you guys form 123 LLC for the property address, and both of you go inside of there, and you guys provide a capital contribution, which is the down payment, right? You're funding the down payment and or some rehab costs.
Yeah.
Okay. He's ready and able to do the work. You've got the cash for the down payment, but he doesn't have the cash for the down payment. And so normally you would create this joint LLC right here, and that's how you do it. And then that LLC is the one that gets approved with the hard money lender. Is that out of the question right now? Because that's the cleanest.
Yeah, I think that is out of the question just because the acquisition of the property is sort of already underway.
Yeah.
I believe the general contractor has already sent money to title and escrow to secure the property.
Yeah. I mean, things can't change. I've seen things change a lot, even in the last minute. But another
And
option.
to your model, that's what we want to do in the future because our hope is that this one will go well and then we keep working on projects together, not just a one and done. So we're looking into what you're saying, creating a third LLC where we're all under. I guess even then we were wondering if the hard money lender would have the new LLC jump through all the hoops, but that's a question we would
They will.
discuss at a
They
later-
will.
Yeah.
The new
Yeah.
LLC is going to have to do that. That's how they
Yes.
do it.
And so
So-
that's why we figured it wouldn't necessarily be viable right now when things are kind of already in motion.
It's a fair question. I would ask the question of the hard money lender and your construction partner, right? Because you can assign a purchase contract to a new LLC formed by the partners anytime, no problem, even up to the day of closing, and it's not going to kill the deal. Number one. Number two, this is the better way to get approved, and I've seen it done with lenders where they're like, yes, you're approved on this basis. You can have a capital partner join your LLC as long as it's a non-controlling interest. And so if what non-controlling interest means to the lender is up to that lender. Remember, we have to play by other people's rules. But if
Yeah.
that lender, that hard money lender says non-controlling interest, and in my experience, that means less than 10%. Yeah, less than 10% ownership for you. And the operating agreement says non-controlling. So like you can vote on stuff, but 10% interest isn't enough to be, to own and control. So if everything's done by majority consent and the other party has a majority and they're the ones that are actually qualified for the borrow, that's where I've seen hard money lenders be like, yep, we're good with that.
Okay.
So without that though, does the contractor have any other assets you can secure your capital against?
I don't think at the moment. But we could have that I can have that conversation with the contractor.
Okay. And you guys, this is a way to do it, but I'm telling you, it's still dangerous to secure in second or third position on another asset if you haven't done a title search. Anytime you're cross-collateralizing, it's not okay to just say, yeah, we'll just secure with this other property. Okay, how much debt does that other property have? Because if
Yeah.
I'm going in second or third or fourth position and I haven't checked if I'm going in as a secured lender on that thing and it's worth 150,000 and it's already got liens up to 150,000, then I'm really not going to get paid if I have to foreclose. So there really is no security in that situation.
Mm.
One of the other alternate routes that people do, and I'm going to put an X on it, is to secretly record your loan in second position. Well, not secretly if you record it, but to wait and defer the recording of your loan in second position because you intended to do it from the beginning and you know that the hard money lender is not going to allow it. So if you delay, you're just playing games and intentionally withholding material information. I can't stand behind that.
Yeah, yeah.
Nor anybody who preaches that it's okay. It's not. When you sign the agreement with the hard money lender, you're supposed to disclose any other agreements you have related to the purchase and finance of the property. You have an agreement and an understanding in place already between you and them, right? So this is the way to play by the rules. The two ways to play by the rules are, number one is going to be to get qualified on that thing, on that loan, or on that, get a new LLC and get qualified on it. Or be a co-signer guarantor, maybe. Like, ask the lender, what would it take for me to be included on here because I'm going to bring this payment. And then the other way is to cross collateralize.
Got it.
Michael says, since there's 6 capital partners at 10%, they would have the majority and be protected. That's a good question. See, that's where it comes into what means non-controlling. If you had 6 capital partners that could join forces and have 60% voting power and majority rules, then no, they do still retain a controlling interest. And the hard money lender should be aware of that. And basically, you might have to declare that anybody, and this is where LLC operating agreements can get pretty crazy, and you get into SEC stuff, is if you have classes of members, different classes, class A, class B,
Yeah.
1, 2, whatever, you can have voting and non-voting members. And you could be a non-voting member, but I don't have an operating agreement template for that yet. I would love one. It sounds flippin' fun.
Got it. Got it. So voting, non-voting.
So voting and non-voting, it basically, in some fashion or another, most lenders will approve, in my experience, most lenders will approve this loan for the new LLC based on, based on this person's credit qualifications. They'll approve it, even if somebody else is bringing the cash who's a partner, if it's through a joint LLC where the person who brought the money is not in control of the project.
Got it.
Tiffany Goldsmith says, could you file a memorandum or a mechanics lien for the amount of capital contribution after closing? Capital contribution is a term for inside of an LLC, by the way. The capital contribution would be a member's contribution toward, you can use it in a different definition, but I'm saying this so that we're clear on what I would mean. No, I don't think you have the right to do that, or it wouldn't make sense. Anytime somebody mixes the role of lender and partner, stuff can get real messy real fast. And I tend to say, slow down. I think you're being a little too creative, or you might be getting a little crazy here. I understand your intentions. I love it. I love the idea. I love the creativity, but you need to be careful about how you do it, because if you structure it as a loan, that's one thing.
Yeah.
If you structure it as a capital contribution, you're not owed any money back unless and until the operating agreement says you are, or there's profits. And guess when there are profits on a flip? Only after. So if you're a lender, you could be getting monthly payments. If you're a lender, you could be waiting until the end to get paid. But like, profits are not calculated until loans are paid off. And so a capital contribution, is it a loan or not? Now, I'm a member of an LLC. I made a capital contribution, but guess what? Caleb Christopher individually also made a loan to the LLC because I wanted paid back independently. I didn't want that factored into, they're not the same thing. In the bank account, the LLC uses the money the same way, but they're not treated the same for tax purposes, for calculation of profits, etc.
Okay. Interesting.
So yeah, it's a tangled web, and my little sketch was helpful if you followed along. But if you look at let me show it one more time. If you look at the sketch right now, the question is, does this give you any value? If you didn't see how it got built, probably not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're here for it, it should make sense.
Totally. Well, I appreciate that. I guess we have conversations with the hard money lender to have, and
That's where I would start. Like, look, just ask for permission. Like, this is what we intend to do.
totally.
Actually, my first conversation would be with the contractor. Do you have an asset that's not overleaned where I could secure the money? That's the simplest, because it's outside and we can rock and roll with that real fast, and without tripping or alerting the hard money lender of the difference.
Right. That was that's what we're trying to tiptoe around.
Yeah.
Since-
Otherwise, the second step would be to face it head on. So I would reverse the number 1 and 2 on my diagram.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Good question. We have Steve with a raised hand. Steve, welcome.
Yeah, I just had a question because I belong to a real estate investment club in Oregon, and we just had the Oregon State person who's in charge of securities do a presentation,
Ooh,
and
nice.
one of the things that they emphasized, or she emphasized, was that if you get together with a group of people to put together funds to purchase a property. Now, I don't know, this is in Oregon. I don't know if it's other states or whatever, but if you do that, you could be tripping over the securities laws. And so you have to make sure that you're not acting as a security, or that you don't become a security without a license.
Yeah.
And that's just a caution to people that want to pool together funds, even if you're in an LLC, unless all 5 or 6 members have equal say in what they do. If you only got
Yep.
one person running a show, 2 people running a show, then you're a security if you're pooling all that money together.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why I said, as soon as you get into different classes of members, you're in danger. And it is in danger of basically operating a security, that an unregistered security, which is a very regulated thing. And that can be very dangerous, you guys, from a
And
legal
Oregon-
standpoint.
And Oregon's laws are miles on top of what federal securities laws are.
More
And
restrictive.
more restrictive in each individual state, and they're very specific about if you put together money and you intend to purchase a real estate and make a profit. If you're not a registered security, then you can end up in deep doo-doo.
Yeah, and
so
I'll admit, you guys, I'm over my head a little bit on this definition, but I'm going to stretch and tell you what I understand from my perspective. Anytime you enter into an LLC operating agreement, or you get partners or any of this stuff, or solicit funds, if somebody has a completely passive role and or they're guaranteed a specific return, you're playing in the world of securities. If they have a non-controlling it now, if they're a member and they make capital contributions and they have preferred returns and all this stuff, but they have an active role in the project, that's not the same thing. That is legit, to my understanding. That's legit. So if somebody's job literally is to provide a value add service of, I'll do all the accounting, which would normally cost $3,000, $5,000, $7,000 per year, whatever you want to do. Now you have an active role in the business. But people need to have that active role for you not to be a security or regulated there as that.
and all of the people, not just 1 or 2.
Yeah. Everybody has to have their own legit role. So 10 people on an LLC, it's going to be hard for 10 people to actually have an active role in flipping a house, Well,
they have to have a role, specific role of making a decision together, all the same decision together. I mean, if they have different roles that aren't pertaining to, say, approving a contract or approving the terms of the deal, they all have to have that together, or they are a security. They're acting as a security.
Yeah.
At least that's in Oregon. I don't know what state she's in, but
it's a good word of caution. So again, that's why, guys, if you're a lender, I want you to be a lender. If you're a partner, I want you to be a partner. I don't like mixing that. I don't like mixing it at all. Now, can you loan for interest and fees and all this stuff, and for an exchange of percentage ownership at some stage in the company? Sure. They can be two things, but that can be a term and condition of the loan. But if you join an LLC and that LLC defaults on the loan to you, you've defaulted on yourself. So how fun is that? Thank you, Steve. Good insights. Great question. Great comment, actually. But yeah, it's a weird relationship, and it can get real messy because there can be a mix of roles there where you're acting against yourself, and like, is it a conflict of interest for you to be a voting member, and also be in debt to your other company, which you hold? People can take stuff to court, and it can be real expensive to be right. Kind of my bottom line. Ella Ray, welcome. Got a raised hand. Can we get video feed? Yay.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I just wanted to say first off, thank you so very much, because you're the reason why I became a TC.
Right on.
And it's been amazing watching your journey, and I've learned so much from you. And I just wanted to take this opportunity and see what your insight was on something that I've been approached with and I'm working on, but I'm not necessarily super comfortable about it because there's something about it that
Yeah.
is just kind of giving me like the, I don't know that this is totally right vibe.
Yep.
So I have somebody who is assigning a subject to a homestead buyer.
Yeah.
Like doing a straight assignment on it. So I think you're muted.
I'm telling Instagram how to get here. I'm listening though.
Oh. So I'm not like there's no well, I don't know which contract you have, but the dispo contract that we have for like sub two dispo is positioning the seller as the person who already has the sub two themselves and they're selling it on a wrap. This is not a wrap because they don't own it. It
It's
is an
literally an
assignment, but I
assignment.
feel like there's still yeah, because they're a homestead buyer, I feel like there's still some stuff in there that probably we're not getting from them. I know they're not using an RMLO or anything like that, but it just feels kind of funky. And I don't know if it's just because I've not done one of these yet, or if there's something there that I'm missing.
No, I agree. It's one of those edge cases where what is the appropriate paperwork to use? I don't like the idea of an assignment to a homestead buyer who's not now if they're an investor and they understand assignment contracts and stuff like that, that's a bit different story. But if you're soliciting like I would rather turn that into a novation. No. It still technically is an assignment, but man, the full disclosures, like when I have a homestead buyer taking over, I'm not going to do it as not a wrap. And I say that there's always exceptions to every rule, but I'm not going to do that transaction as a naked sub two.
Sure.
I'm just not. It needs to be a wrap. I want the homestead buyer to have a documented, publicly recorded obligation to the other party to make those payments. And for the other party to have the right to foreclose for non-payment.
Yeah, and I think the thing that really worried me was that when title came back and was like, oh, you know, because we don't have a social security number and we don't have an ITIN. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, that makes them a fantastic option. Psych. No thanks. Please no.
I'm like, what are we doing right now?
So
Okay.
the buyer, the buyer doesn't have social like how are you possibly going to foreclose on that on that buyer when they default?
And I'm not sure that the seller knows
That's the
this
other problem.
about the buyer.
Yeah.
I think it's a very precarious position to be putting the seller in, even if they have a promissory note and a mortgage. What good is that going to do if they can't find this person?
It does allow you to foreclose. Two things. Don't let me forget both. I'm going to say them both right now. Number one, the promise to pay mortgage is a document that I'm happy to release to everybody. I'll give that away for free. That's private, something I built that for my clients, but I'll push that out right now because I think it's important that people have it. Number two is pig nose. It's a diagram. I'm going to draw a diagram of what it's like to have a wrap mortgage when there's no equity in the property because I think that's dangerous. So audience, don't let me forget both of those. Number one, let's find this promise to pay. Promise to pay mortgage. It is copyrighted, so please leave my information at the bottom. I'm proud of the work.
You have some great contracts and I miss them a lot.
Okay. It's on screen. You guys see it? Let's just walk through this thing. Let's just take a minute and walk through this. I think this is something that's severely lacking on naked sub two deals. The closing itself is not sufficient for me to say you can take somebody to court with bulletproof, like, yeah, 100%, you promised to pay this thing and you owe it. I'm not cool with that. So for the sake of this, I built this promise to pay mortgage. It is a promissory note. Even though it's unsecured, technically this is an unsecured promissory note, okay? The buyer and the seller, blah, blah, blah. The buyer is acquiring the property subject to an existing loan or liens. We're just going to call that the existing loan, okay? It's evidenced by one or more mortgages or deed of trust. So we're just laying the groundwork for what is this thing? What is the situation that's happening? Now, it's really short. It's really short and sweet. Now, section 1, commitment to pay mortgage on behalf of another or of other. The buyer, this agreement obligates the buyer to make payments to the existing loan until it's paid in full. Never before have I seen paperwork that promises where the buyer has to promise to make those payments? Are you kidding me? That's crazy to me.
This is good.
Next. Execution of this contract is acknowledgement by the buyer that the buyer is responsible for making timely payments to all parties owed for the existing loan. So in case there's multiple debts, et cetera, the solar lien, all this other stuff, if you insist on doing a naked sub two, and I know there are circumstances in which it is beneficial and reasonable to do that. An owner occupant, I think, is not one of those that I would select. It's possible, but next, they provide seller, upon request, any statement or explanation or affidavit regarding the financial arrangement. This is the debt to income ratio question from before, you guys. Long-term buyer, you're promising that you'll cooperate with the seller to show their future lender, yeah, I'm actually the one responsible for making payments. Yes, I am making payments. Here's evidence of the payments. Like, how much more goodwill does this build with your seller? And we just want to declare, for the sake of clarity, the buyer's obligations do not cease until the existing loan has been paid in full. And guess what? Existing loan, capitalized term, that is subject to existing loans or liens. So one or more that they've taken it subject to at the time of purchase are all considered the existing loan. So the solar, the water, and the mortgage, and the second mortgage, and the HELOC, until those are all paid in full, the buyer's obligations on this are not released.
Okay.
Insurance requirement, buyer agrees to maintain. And guys, you also see new as of 3/7/24. I am updating my documents on the regular. Buyer agrees to maintain insurance policy consistent with the use of the property, such as owner occupant, vacant, dwelling, landlord policy, etc., which satisfies the requirements of the existing loan. So they're agreeing to do that. I don't like the whole concept of buyer not required to maintain insurance. I get the very extended logic for the edge case that it might be necessary to do that. I think I just got rid of that. Default and remedies. So this is the rest of this is regular promissory note language. Okay. Okay, I'm going to remove the performance stuff real quick because that's not what I intend to hand out to people. I don't like that. Let me purge all that real quick, and I'll download this as a Word doc, and I will drop it in the chat.
Thank you so much.
Again, I'm releasing this, you guys, under copyright. Please leave my stuff at the bottom. I am asking for credit long-term, like this was my brainchild on purpose. So, all right, let me put it in the chat for everybody on the Zoom. If you're not in the Zoom, Instagram, you're going to miss this file. Computer, promissory note, promise to pay mortgage. I think the title of the document says with performance agreement. You might want to strip that.
Okay.
Okay, and then I got to undo so my document goes back to its prior state. Yeah, I have that in there because most of the time we just remove it. In fact, a performance agreement's extremely rare to come into play. But I have to hold the language somewhere, so that's where I hold it.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. And with my templates, I have stuff highlighted because highlight means it needs to be addressed. That means either changed or removed. Next, what did I say? It was like this, the actual security. I want to talk about the actual security for somebody who does a wrap. So let's say your mortgage balance is $275 and the property is worth $280. All right, this is simple enough so far. If they sold, low or no equity, if they sold, there's pretty much no Instagram. Come on, my app. There's pretty much no equity here. Not enough to really do anything. But if you did a wraparound mortgage, let's go blue for wraparound. Okay. If it's a mirror wrap, what protections, Ellie, you probably know some general answers here. What protections are you granting the seller? Like there's benefits to a wraparound mortgage, right? What protections and benefits are you giving?
In terms of documents?
Yeah, by giving them a wraparound mortgage, the seller, the original borrower.
You're allowing the seller to foreclose on the buyer without having to wait for the underlying lender to foreclose on everyone if the buyer defaults on the mortgage.
That's
on
right.
Payments.
That's right. And that's the primary protection is we're saying you actually have the right to initiate foreclosure for non-payment. And you can have pretty stiff penalties on your buyer for that. And you don't have to wait 6 to 12 to 18 months before the original lender decides that that's what they're going to do. And you don't have to take this whole thing to court and just sue and hope that a court grants you the right to foreclose because you didn't get it for yourself in the first place. That's the benefit. Instagram, we're live on creativetc.io/event, and you can see the screen share. So that's the main benefit is this right of foreclosure. Well, tell me, from the perspective of a buyer at an auction for a foreclosure, if the property's worth $280, and you can only look at it from the street and see past Zillow pictures, and it's for auction, how much are you going to bid on that thing? Knowing that you have to pay
Probably like
in
half.
full. Okay, you're right. You're right. You ain't going to bid full price. Nobody is. So let's put the auction. Let's be generous. It auctions for $240,000. Well, $240 goes to paying the original lender. That's great. But you have this shortage. Not cool. So it's not like it's going to actually fix the problem that that person actually still owes money. Or even if you wrapped it. So let's take the mirror away. Even if you wrapped it at, $325. It's clown numbers. You're not getting paid. The only way you're getting paid is if they don't default and you don't have to foreclose.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people
Yeah,
say
I
if
see
I
that.
wrap it, I have the right to foreclose and it makes me safe. Well, it doesn't actually financially protect you. It's a stop loss measure, not a profit measure. It's two different angles, two different approaches. And so if I have to foreclose on this person, number one, I want the right to foreclose because if I start the foreclosure process, what can I possibly do as an alternate?
If deed in lieu of foreclosure, have them sign a deed in lieu of foreclosure.
That's what I want. I want the deed in lieu of foreclosure, but I don't believe in a pre-signed deed in lieu of foreclosure for legal enforceability purposes. But guess what? Once you start the process and start following the process, I have the option request that deed in lieu, request it fresh, ask for a new one. If they sign one after they've defaulted, it's valid. That's what I want. I want the right of foreclosure, not because I'm going to financially recover with it, but because, crap, man, you're making me do this. Can we just reset? Even still, like if I'm going to be 40K in the hole here, 35K, whatever, and possibly have a judgment following me around as the borrower, is it possible that it's cheaper for me to just say, please, will you just give me the property back and I'll start over? And if they say no, say, can I give you $5 grand, 10 grand, 20 grand? As evil and terrible as it sounds to have to do that, it's cheaper than having a judgment for 35 or 40. I want the power to foreclose because it gives me the position of power to negotiate, a position of power to negotiate. Chat, is this a helpful perspective? Where did my chat go?
Super helpful.
There's my chat. Okay, got a super. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Good. Ella, did I answer the questions?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Caleb. I
Good.
really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. I love seeing you around. So thanks.
Likewise. Thanks.
That was a great question. We got Frankie with a hand raised. Frankie, what's up, man?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Fantastic. Have we talked before?
I don't believe we have. This is my first time on here.
Hold on. By the way, anybody, if you have a contract that you want to get written up, put it in the chat. We have live people on my team ready to go take a breakout room and just help you write it up. You don't have to do it live on this or wait your turn. I've got people standing by, full-time staff. I'm paying them to be here to write up your contract. So on Instagram, get on here and just request a private breakout room and let's do these contract write-ups. I'm not going to send out 45 if you guys are just waiting your turns.
Yep. I brought Frankie in.
Oh, there's Susan.
Susan's fantastic.
Nosheen's waiting for you in 1. Can you move me as well? Or Sarah or Vanessa? Because I'm not co-host.
You should, you
I
can
will.
pick your own room if you want.
Oh, I can pick my own room, sorry. But Nosheen is in 1.
Okay, so we do have a contract right up. Frank, do you have a public question, or are you jumping straight in and you're just going to go right up?
I could just jump straight in. That'd be awesome.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'm glad I said that. You guys don't wait your turn to get a contract right up. We have live people ready for you to come in and just go do it. Okay.
Sweet. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah,
Room 1,
absolutely.
Frankie.
We have 15 breakout rooms and like 5 or 6 staff on here. We're ready to write up stuff if you've got a deal or a potential deal. Let's rock and roll. Somebody share this, please. Can you guys pause for a minute and share free contract write-ups? I'm here for another 20 minutes today, but we're doing this tomorrow too. And I want to crank out 45, and we're nowhere close to 45 because I think people they don't believe it, or they think they don't have a deal, or who knows what the reason is. But let's get over all of that stuff and rock and roll with some stuff. Instagram, creativetc.io/event, and you can join the live Zoom. If you've got a contract you want to sling an offer, I don't care. My cost, I'd rather be slinging stuff than having people sit twiddling thumbs. Why would anyone do a naked wrap? Tiffany says. A naked sub 2. Hold on. Let's pull up an article that I co-authored with one of our employees, Ilza. Love Ilza. If you've never met her, she's fantastic. She runs our lobby. So Creative TC, by the way. Oh, I was screen sharing that whole time. Stupid. I got Zoom on 2 screens and I have a full screen face of myself. So the way we operate is we have a virtual office with a lobby. If you have an appointment, you land in our lobby. Ilza says hi and asks if you have an appointment with somebody. And we've got 15, 25 breakout rooms and 30 staff all day, every day in various breakout rooms. So you want to work with Creative TC, you land in the lobby, you say hello to wonderful Ilza. She'll make your day. And then she will put you in a breakout room with whoever you've got the appointment with. And that's how we just constantly operate. We just have this big virtual office with people coming and going and moving about the country, as it were. So now I'll re-screen share. Haha, silly. I want to show you types of wrap mortgages. Great. So creativetc.io/articles/types of wrap mortgages. I'll put that in the Zoom chat. This is a really helpful, article, you guys. Super helpful. There's different types of wraps, okay? And I've got a video that goes with it. There's the wraparound mortgage categorically. It is a type of mortgage that wraps around an existing one, right? At a high level. But there's a mirror wrap, there's an equity wrap, and there's a rate wrap. Now you can combine the equity wrap and the rate wrap, but at a very high level, at the risk of spoiling the article, which is not very long, and I think everybody should read and send to a realtor, by the way. The mirror wrap is or otherwise known as an exact wrap. You're not marking it up the price or the interest rate. It's a straight pass through. The new borrower just promises to pay you exactly what you owe on the exact terms and conditions that you owe, so that you don't have any further middleman obligation. You don't get out of your obligation as the borrower. You don't get out of your obligation with the original lender, but you've got somebody else who agreed to pay you exactly what you owe so that you have a dollar for dollar match on obligations there. Next, the equity wrap is when you mark it up. So if I have some equity in the property, I can just mark up the price. So if I owe $275 and it's worth $325, great. If they'll give me $25K down, I'll give them a mortgage for $300 at the same interest rate. Cool. It's not quite a mirror because they actually owe me more than I owe the underlying lender. And so I'll make money every month, a couple of dollars. I'll make money every month the entire time until it's paid off. And then there's the rate wrap, which is where if I'm borrowing at 2%, you can't get a 2% mortgage anymore. So am I compelled? Is it my duty to offer you a straight markup or a straight pass through of 2% interest? No, that's an advantage that I have that I intend to make money on. I'm going to mark it up to current rates, 6, 7, 8%, and I'll make the difference. And you can combine the equity and the rate. So if I owe $275 at 2%, then I'm going to let you buy at $325 with a $25,000 down payment. So I'm going to finance you $300 at 6%. And now I'm making several $100s a month. So understanding those types of wrap mortgages. So when Tiffany says, I might need some clarity from you, Tiffany, why would anyone do a naked wrap? Were you talking naked sub 2 as opposed to wrap? A naked sub 2 being there's no actual mortgage or deed of trust or public declaration on public record of the debt obligation. Is Tiffany still here? Yeah, you are. Yes, okay, that's what she meant. She meant the naked sub 2. So the naked sub 2, why would you do a naked sub 2? Naked sub 2 is what I call the type of deal where you're taking the property subject to existing liens and you're promising to make payments on those liens, but you're not recording a mortgage or a deed of trust in favor of the original borrower. The reason to do that is if I intend to then turn around and wrap the property to an owner occupant buyer, some title companies do not like wrapping wraps. They don't like double wraps. And I've had title companies require the original transaction to be unwound and that the end buyer actually performs a wrap purchase agreement with the original borrower. That can be a problem. That can be frustrating. And so if you already know that's going to be a problem or you're concerned about it, you can agree to a naked sub 2 for the A to B transaction because you plan on doing a wraparound and still providing that security on the B to C transaction. That's the main circumstance in which I would consider a naked sub 2. Also, if it's a high risk of due on sale for recording additional public record documents, then potentially a naked sub 2 is appropriate there as well. Because with a naked sub 2, you've got a lot more flexibility. But the problem is you've got a lot more flexibility to be good or bad. And that's the reason I don't like them, because you have so much flexibility to do the wrong things just as much as the right side. But, if you get a due on sale and you don't have a recorded mortgage, it's real quick and easy to do a deed back and a lease with option to purchase and all this stuff without having to do corrective closing documents to wipe out that mortgage and all the other things that can't exist if you deed it back and try to get it on a lease option with a lease, for example. Hope that was helpful. Alan. Welcome back.
Quick question. Going back to what Ella was saying, where you were talking about where, let's say it's a mirror wrap, and I'm let's say a seller, and I sold it to somebody on a mirror wrap. Where do I actually go to foreclose it? Does it still go through court?
Yep, just the same. So some states are judicial foreclosure, and I'll explain for everybody. Some states are judicial foreclosure. So if it's a mortgage state, you have to sue for a judgment to foreclose. If it's a non-judicial state, meaning it's a deed of trust state, then you can proceed to send it to an auction without having to wait for a court order. Now, you still have to follow certain timelines and notice requirements and things like that. And it's a state-by-state thing. So don't assume you know everything just because you don't know how deed of trust works in state A versus, another state.
Okay.
But yeah. Okay, cool. That was an easy one. Give me a hard question. Evan, lay it on me, man.
I'm going to give you a tough one, bro. Can you hear me?
Yeah, gotcha.
Cool. So 2 quick questions. One, we're going to contract today on one that's a VA loan, and I've never done a contract for deed before, but
Yeah,
Marcelo,
what state?
It's in Tennessee.
Okay.
And so Marcelo brought it to my attention, and I was like, okay, let's try it out. So gonna do that, and I plan on wrapping the property though on the back end. And so we're pre-signing like a general warranty deed is kind of what we talked about in case the end buyer does decide he just really wants the deed or she wants the deed. But I'm curious, number one, he was telling me about the VA and, equitable interest and all that stuff. And with the VA loan specifically, that, the risk of doing sale is minimal or maybe zero. I don't know. But when it comes to doing a contract for deed on something else, a conventional mortgage, like, is that still something that you would recommend if you could do that? Or is it like, does that limit the risk? Like,
so on a case by cases, outside of the VA loans, I would look at a contract for deed as an option, but I know on FHA loans, they also still already explicitly prohibit. Can I use less words? Let me start that over. FHA loans prohibit contract for deed as a means of transfer. They'll still call due on sale for a contract for deed.
Okay.
That's the short version. On a case by case basis, if it's a different type of loan, look at the due on sale clause section of the actual mortgage. Okay. And if it does not say that, if it does not categorically include that type of deal or that type of paperwork, Yeah, I'd look at a contract for deed.
Okay. And if I get a
100%.
contract for deed, and let's say I just rent it out, for example, since I don't, I guess, have the deed, can I still write off everything tax wise since I have equitable interest or?
Okay, non-CPA, but this is like a big deal. When I started learning creative finance, everybody was under the impression you cannot claim depreciation and other tax benefits if you don't hold the deed, if you're not the owner of record. But when I read the IRS publication, I think it's 537. Why do I remember that number? It's probably the wrong number.
Because you're smart. That's why.
Well, all right. It might be 537. Somebody can check me.
It's 536, but it's okay.
Okay. Close enough. So IRS publication indicates that so listen, let me frame this. IRS talks to sellers of real estate transactions. So we have to infer what it means for buyers. That's the logic that I'm approaching this with. It says, if you're selling a property on an installment sale contract, you have two options for tax purposes. They do consider the sale on an installment contract to be a sale. They do consider it to be a sale for tax purposes, even in a contract for deed, some arrangement where the deed is transferred at a later date. Because people have used these things to dodge paying taxes. And so the IRS says, no games. Here's the rule. We consider it a sale for the purpose of taxes when you do a contract for deed. Okay. That means if you sell on a contract for deed, you owe depreciation recapture, you have capital gains to calculate, all the things, and you can treat those taxes, the capital gains in particular, you can choose to realize or acknowledge or receive those profits all at once. So if you're going to receive, $75,000 in profits or capital gains over the next 30 years, you can choose to acknowledge and pay taxes on that full 75 upfront, or you can choose to realize the profits as they're received and pay taxes incrementally every year. So if you receive $2,500 of profit every year, then you're going to pay your capital gains every year on the $2,500. You have the two options there on the tax treatment as the seller. But if we rewind a little bit, the actual important part for buyers came a minute ago when I said the IRS treats it as a sale for the purpose of acknowledging taxes. Right. So if the IRS counts it as a sale for the purpose of calculating depreciation recapture timeframe and capital gains, then they must also treat it for buyers as an acquisition for the purpose of tax write-offs.
Nice. I think you just recited 536, 537, and 538 all in 2 minutes.
No, they're way longer than that. My recreational reading is stuff like that when I'm not busy with people's deals.
That's perfect. Yeah, so with a VA loan, you would try to do contract for deed on those wraps if they're cool with that.
Yeah, I call it a soft wrap. I'm going to try to do contract for deed acquisition and disposition. And you work with us, so we've got document templates for it. But my document templates allow, when we know what's happening, and this is why I tell everybody, you need to know your exit strategy because it determines what paperwork you use on the front end. So our documents allow for an investor buyer to take it on a contract for deed, and it gives explicit permission for that person to then turn around and resell it on a subsequent contract for deed, not just to assign the existing contract for deed to somebody, but to sell it on a subsequent downstream contract for deed with different terms and conditions. So you can do your equity and your rate wrap markups.
You're awesome. Thank you, bro.
Absolutely. Thanks. Good question.
Yeah.
Oh, how exciting. 10 minutes left. Do we have anybody else who's getting a contract that they need to do? Just go find somebody who needs a contract and say, I got a free one for you. Come get it. And just bring them in here. Ella.
Hey, so I just realized I have one more question for you because you were talking about taxes. So I know one of the big draws to selling on a sub-2 is like you don't have to pay all these capital gains taxes, or selling on a seller finance, you don't have to pay all these capital gains taxes. But then when I see the closing docs and I see the form that they provide for the taxes, it has like the entire sales price. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so that goes back to the IRS lets you take your taxes two different ways. If you're not active, you're along for the ride. It's like, I'm going to take this back to when my wife had our first child in the hospital. If you don't already know what you want to happen, you're not going to have time in the moment to make decisions about, do they get the K shot right now? Does the husband cut the umbilical? Does the doctor, who does what? Like if you don't figure that stuff out ahead of time and that baby's popping out, it's too late to make a lot of those decisions. And it's the same thing with the tax treatment for the sale. So people do need to talk to their CPAs as they're selling or in the process. They've got 20, 30-day escrow period. So how do you want to treat these taxes? Yes, there is a tax advantage available, but only if you claim it. Now, it
I
may be
see.
something that you
Okay.
have to structure during closing. You know what? This is where Caleb's a little. I've not sold and had to pay capital gains yet. I'm a young investor career-wise, so I haven't had to pay capital gains. So
Mhm.
I don't know if you have all year to wait until you do taxes to make that election, or if you have to do it at closing. But you have
Okay.
the option, my understanding, you have the option to take gains or to pay capital gains on the actual gains you realize on a year-by-year basis. And so if you bought it 100,000 and you sell it 200,000 and there's no other confounding factors, you've got 50% profits, right? 50% of your total purchase sale price is profit. So if you receive
Mhm.
$25,000 cash down payment, they're going to treat 12 and a half of that as profits. And you're
I
going to pay
see.
capital gains taxes on the amount of profits you receive, not the 25,000 you receive, because not all of that was profit. If half of that was profit, you pay capital gains on that amount.
Okay. Okay, so they
This is
definitely
my
should.
non-accountant, non-CPA
Yeah.
observations. And if somebody says, "Hey, you're way over the top, you're wrong," please tell me. Please tell me.
Makes sense. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So it is an option. It is an advantage that's available, but you do have to seize and claim that.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay. Good to know.
Good question. Let's see. By the way, somebody mentioned Tennessee. Oh, was that Evan? Here, I'm going to share this. I'm going to share just a little tiny snippet because the rest of this document is literally a trade secret. This is what we use. We have this daily thing on Tennessee. So Tennessee is a deed of trust state, and deed of trust tells me it's non-judicial, meaning you don't have to go get a court judgment in order to start the foreclosure process. Okay. Some states have mortgages and deeds of trust, and sometimes they're used for, like, maybe South Dakota does mortgages for farmland and deeds of trust for houses, or vice versa. Commercial loans are typically deed of trust while the others are mortgages. Like, you need to know that on a state by state basis when you start doing some of these deals. But Tennessee is a deed of trust state. You can close either with the title company or an attorney, closing attorney. What else? And the executory contract name is a contract for deed. So if you're doing contract for deed in Tennessee, it's a contract for deed. If you're doing it in South Carolina, it's a land contract. If you're doing it in Rhode Island, it's a retail installment contract. In Pennsylvania, it's a land installment contract. You see how many names there are for that type of deal or document? So looking this stuff up and understanding it, it's called a land contract, but there's extensive law. Warning in Texas. But my point is, there's a lot of different ways for things to be referenced, and it's important that you use the right language and that you have the right document. Now, I've compared documents from different states with those different names. They say the exact same stuff. They just say this land installment sales contract versus this contract for deed or this agreement for sale. So in my observation, you can do a find and replace and just swap it out. But I will always leave room for, there are state-specific regulations that can play in. And if you have one template, it may not address some of those things. I'm finding that out right now with the lease I've got in the state of Michigan. I've got a tenant and I've got a little issue there, and I've started the process of notifying them and working towards an eviction. And I went to go file for the eviction lawsuit, and come to find out, I sent my own notices in accordance with my lease, but those notices are not the state approved forms. So I got to start my 30-day notification time frame all over again. So there's another month of non-paid rent. That stinks. I still hold out hope that guy's going to get restored, right, and get paid up. That I always hope that, and I hope it for him too, because that's a pretty sucky situation to be in. But I also can't carry the house and the monthly payments because I don't miss my mortgage payments. I can't carry that for much longer. So, my point is, know the laws about the states, and when you work in 15 different states, there's a diversity of laws that you may not be up to speed with. And that I just got hit by that myself. That's just the nature of spreading yourself pretty thin. You guys, any last questions? 5 minutes on the wrap up.
Someone asked a question earlier in the Zoom chat. Do you think I should do RMLO on all seller finance deals?
Yes. To owner occupants, yes. To commercial entities, not necessarily. Is it a good thing to do? Yeah. I would expect that somebody who asks that has probably not done it a bunch of times. The person who's going to ask that question would benefit from the use of one, right? As an abstract observation, the person who's willing to ask that question is going to benefit from the RMLO report, even if it's a commercial buyer where they're not even required to do it. If you actually read the report, now paying for it for the sake of saying I did it, not the same thing. I'm saying if you get it and actually treat the reports as this is part of my investment learning journey, and I'm ready, willing, and able to read the documents and understand what they mean, and to make sure that my buyer is actively assessed and qualified to make sure that they can afford the payments to me. That's a high value. That's worth something. So yeah, I would say, but once you get experience and you understand how to evaluate the commercial buyer borrower, you know, take it or leave it. Okay, you guys, as I'm wrapping up here, I got to change my microphone runs out of battery. As I'm wrapping up here, I just remember Creative TC, we've got free 15-minute consults. I'm looking to do 45 contracts. We're not even anywhere close. I think a lot of people are aware that we're willing to do this, but I don't think they believe it, or they have these deals. So encourage somebody, reach out, send somebody a direct message and say, literally, it's a free contract write-up with creative finance experts. I don't care if it's cash or creative. I want to sling contracts for you. I want to see stuff get signed. I want to see progress. I want to see people taking action, moving in the right direction. And not knowing how to write a contract is no longer an excuse. Get a contract out the door. Okay. No further questions. I'm going to wrap it up, you guys. Thank you for coming. The recording should be on my YouTube channel if you want to go back and watch or get a screenshot of a sketch I was making along the way. But thank you for all the Instagram people popping in and all the shares. I appreciate you guys. I want to help you help yourselves and help other people. And let's do better deals and let's do them ethically. Peace out. Thanks, guys. Well, I better not shut this down if there's people in a breakout room. Hold on. Yeah, there are. I'm going to make Nosheen the host.